This meeting of the Hartford Selectboard on Tuesday, April 16th, 2024 at 6 p.m. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would anyone like to lead us this evening?
Sure.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to close this portion of the Select Board and reopen as the local liquor control board, where we have a number of licenses for consideration. All of them are renewals. The first is for Simon Pearce, doing business as Simon Pearce Restaurant for a license of the first class and the third class. Are there any questions or discussion on this one? If not, I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Mary?
I move that the select board renew the license, the first and third class licenses of Simon Pearce US Incorporated, DBA Simon Pearce Restaurant, 1760 Quechee Main Street, Quechee, Vermont 05059.
Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Brandon. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Our next one is also Simon Pearce. This is a license of the second class. Any discussion on this one? If not, I will take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board review for Simon Pearce US Incorporated DBA Simon Pearce Glass. That's 1760 Quechee Main Street, Quechee, Vermont 05059, their second class license.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a second from Mary. Any discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now we have one for Simon Pearce doing business as Parker House Bistro, Bar and Bistro. This is the first, third, and outside consumption license. Any discussion? Not, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board renew the license of Simon Pearce US Incorporated, doing business as Parker House Bar and Bistro, 1792 Quechee Main Street, Quechee, Vermont 05059, for their first and third class and outside consumption licenses.
Any discussion on this one? Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Kim, any discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Our next is consider the renewal of Wicked Awesome Barbecue. That's a license of the first class and an outside consumption license. Any questions or discussions on this one? Benny?
Yeah, I just need to make sure I understand the process of liquor licenses before I continue. If this board should pass or deny a liquor license, it has the opportunity to be appealed at the state level, correct?
I believe the state review is actually independent. And
Okay,
it's parallel paths.
so, and if it passes the state, therefore it is a valid permit, correct?
That's my understanding.
So they can overrule the town in regards to liquor licenses.
Yes. We can bring things to their attention.
Okay, I thought that's a way, so regardless of what we choose to do, the state can rule on it in their infinite wisdom either way.
They have their own process, yeah.
Right, okay, all right, okay, that's, answers that question. I'm gonna pass it off to someone else if they want it.
Any other
I have
discussion or questions? Okay.
Am I correct in understanding that the state can overrule the town, but the town can't overrule the state?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct,
Just to
yeah.
make sure that's-
Yeah.
Any more questions or discussion?
Happy to make a motion.
Well, I have some more discussion, I guess.
Okay.
So
The
what's,
applicant is here, by the way.
yeah, I understand that. So the alleged violations that are listed on the liquor application are quite serious in nature. I remember not too long ago, I can't remember when it was, 21 maybe, you approached this board for a liquor license and there were some issues involving marijuana. And I'm not sure the complete details with it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was intent to distribute or something of that nature. Again, my memory is not perfect, okay, but I know there was something involving marijuana. At that point in time, I asked you, because I was sitting in this chair, what you were going to do to make sure that these allegations did not happen again. You've been clean for a year, but this is a pretty serious allegation that's before this board that charges are pending for.
Yeah.
Understanding that you are innocent until proven guilty. The problem that I have with this is that any violation is, in my opinion, shows the inability to follow the rules. And when you're not willing to follow the rules of the laws in terms of laws, how can we as a select board have faith that you're willing to follow the local liquor rules? You could please step up to the mic. That's where I'm.
Please identify yourself.
Yeah, that's where I'm confused as far as how it is that we can have trust in you, considering the allegations that are before you. How can we trust that you're not going to violate the liquor laws?
Yes, hi, my name is David McGinnis. I own Wicked Awesome Barbecue. The allegations, first one you're talking about took place in 2017,
Yep.
not 21.
Okay.
I've had no issues on my record till 2017 and no issues since. Now, like you said, I'm innocent until proven guilty. These are false allegations against me. So I have not followed the rules. This is something that I have to fight in court with my lawyers, which I will. I have every confidence that we're going to beat it because I'm innocent of it.
Mr. McGinnis, do you have any, have you ever had any liquor violations?
No.
Okay.
There's been no other issues besides that one in 17.
Okay.
And this false allegation against me right now.
Okay, understood.
Where are you?
Manny?
Yeah. Can you tell me the location that this incident, this did not take place on Wicked Awesome Barbecue
Took
property?
place at my house.
Okay, so not on Wicked Awesome Barbecue property. Okay. I personally would like to boot this to the state and get the state's opinion.
If we approve it, it'll still go to the state.
I understand that, but I personally would rather not approve it and let it go to the state to be overturned.
My thought is this doesn't have anything to do with his ability to sell liquor and their charges, they're not convictions. So I would vote in favor for this, and I don't see any reason for us to punt it.
That's what I was gonna say, that innocent until proven guilty. Anybody can bring a charge against anybody for anything.
I understand that.
You know, and then you have to defend yourself, you have to pay for a lawyer, $7,000 in paying for a lawyer. To defend myself against a false allegation, I'm innocent until proven guilty.
Thank you.
I understand.
Any questions or comments? Otherwise, I'll take a motion.
I will just make the comment that I heard from the town manager earlier, that the input the town has received is that the state will be scrutinizing this application in the years to come.
Motion, unless there are other questions, okay?
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board approve the renewal of Wicked Awesome Barbecue, 93 Beswick Drive, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001 for first class and outside consumption.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Do I have a second from Mary. Discussion before we vote? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
All right, our next license is considering the renewal of Crazy Chris's Elixir Corp, doing business as Elixir. Any questions or comments on this one? Okay, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I move that we approve the renewal of Crazy Chris's Elixir Corp. doing business as Elixir at 188 Main Street, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001 for their first and third class licenses.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second from Brandon. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Our next is to consider the renewal of Squeaky Wheel Incorporated, doing business as the filling station. That's a license of the first class and third class. Any comments, discussion on this?
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the first class and third class license of Squeaky Wheel Incorporated, doing business as filling station, 70 Gate Street, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Kim. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh.
All right. You got that?
Yep.
Good. The next is to consider the renewal of Northern Hospitality LTD Partnership doing business as Hotel Coolidge. This is a license of the first and of the third class. Any questions, comments, discussion? Not, I'll take a motion. Mary?
Yes, I move the select board renew the license, first class and third class license of Northern Hospitality Limited Partnerships doing business as Hotel Coolidge, 39 South Main Street, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Sue. Although, okay, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and finally, our last one is Jake's Quechee Market, doing business as Jake's Quechee Market. That's a license of the second class and it's tobacco license. Any discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we renew the second class and tobacco licenses of Jake's Quechee Market, doing business as the same at 7161 Woodstock Road in Quechee, Vermont, 05059.
We have a motion from Brandon. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Ida. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, great. Good work. All right, so we'll end our time together as the local liquor control board and reopen as the Hartford Select Board. We have no cannabis control board business this evening. Order of agenda.
Can I just point out one
Yep.
thing, Mr. Chair? In terms of the consent agenda, we should also approve the workshop minutes of March 27, 2024.
Okay.
Adding those to approving of minutes.
Oh, so that's at the 3/27/24. That's penciled in. Okay,
That's it.
That's for that. Okay, great.
Sorry,
Never mind.
I don't believe so.
All right, that brings us to public comment. We'll start with people in the room and then hear from anyone who's joining us on Zoom. If you want to speak, please come up to the microphone and give us your name and town or village of residence. You have 5 minutes to speak. We ask that you address the select board as a whole and not engage in any personal attacks. If you have comments on an item that's on our agenda for further discussion later, we'd ask that you hold the comments until then. Otherwise, we'll open it up. Any public comment? Let's see any. Is there anyone on Zoom?
No hands up.
All right, so we'll go to select board comments and announcements. Kim, do you want to kick us off?
Nothing for me today.
Brandon, anything?
No, Mr. Chair.
Mary, anything?
Just congratulations for announcing his senatorial run for our treasurer, Joe Major.
Thank you, Mary. Ida, any comments?
No.
Sue, anything?
Nope.
Lanny?
Nothing.
And I don't have anything either, so we'll go to appointments. We're considering a reappointment. This is of Denise Welch-May to the Design Review Committee for a 3-year term beginning April 16th, 24, ending April 15th, 2027. Any discussion on this one? Not, I'll take a motion. Kim?
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board reappoint Denise Welch-May to the Design Review Committee for a 3-year term beginning April 16, 2024 and ending April 15, 2027.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
We have a second from Mary. Any discussion on this reappointment? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And that brings us to the town manager's report. John, I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, we're going on a blistering pace,
Yes,
Mr. Chair.
incredible.
Congratulations to you on that. On Monday, April 15th, voters came out to vote for the school district's revised budget proposal, its bond proposal, and its charter revision proposal, which, as you know, was identical in content to the format of the town's version of the charter revision proposal. School budget and the bond proposals were approved. The sales tax article went down, but the other proposed charter revision proposals were approved. So the town manager has so notified our legislative delegation, and the town clerk has reported the results to the Secretary of State's office. Just one more thing to mention, which is that we have set up a tour of the Hartford Area Career and Technical Center per their invitation. The plan is to conduct a tour on Tuesday, April 23rd at 4:30 p.m. We're talking with them about a possible additional tour for those who were not available for that first date that was selected. Brandon, Ida, Sue, and perhaps myself will be attending. If anyone else wishes to attend that tour, please just let me know. Sorry?
The cohort is that day, 3 to 5.
Oh, well then, as I say, I may be there or I may not. Maybe I'm not gonna be there. So I'm right again. Just in terms of quick highlights of the SIGACs, several things from the planning department. There are several surveys pending and we request public input on them. For example, the White River Junction Designated Downtown Program has a consumer and business survey. The Town Plan Economic Development Chapter has a survey circulating in the community, and it's also available on the town's website with hard copies available at the town hall and town libraries in the Bugby Center. And finally, there's a bicycle and pedestrian town-wide plan that's under consideration through the Two Rivers Quechee Regional Commission, and a community survey is broadly circulating now. There will be a public listening forum on that matter, the bike ped planning, on May 2nd at the Bugby Senior Center from 6 to 8. And a reminder that Green Up Day is coming up on Saturday, May 4th. Thank you.
Questions for John?
Just very quickly, when you asked whether anyone else was interested to let you know about the tour for the Hartford Area Career Technology Center, did you mean select board members or also town officials, also any member of
If
the
anybody
public?
wants to approach me, I can certainly pass along their interest. I'm sure they'd be happy to have as many people engaged and learning about their facility as possible. But the invitation was preliminarily submitted to select board members.
Other questions for John? Okay.
Just, I love that there's so many surveys to get information from our community, and I hope people don't get survey fatigue and continue to respond to those things, because I know, I don't know what the exact status is, but the process management team for the community safety assessment is also working on a survey that is another one that I really hope will get some robust response from. So I guess I'm speaking to ask members of the public to fill out lots of surveys in the coming weeks.
Good, Mary?
And speaking of surveys, the one from the state about property taxes, is that just to select board members or to all residents?
Not sure what you're talking about.
I got one that was talking about appraisals and assessments for property, and and they listed the people, and you had to pick and choose, and I chose municipal officer, so I didn't know if anybody else had gotten that.
I did get that. It went to my junk folder actually, but I did see it. I haven't done it because I didn't know how much of a priority it was for us to do,
Well,
but
it's the state asking so that they can figure out what's supposed to be the best options for our state on how to reappraise and assess, and some of it, I didn't even know the language, to be honest with you.
Everyone can
Okay.
check their.
yeah,
Maybe
I guess
folder.
the
Maybe our
one,
assessor knows.
I'm not sure. The one I got is from someone who's based in Kansas City, Missouri for an assessment advisor. So I don't know if they contracted someone out of state for this, or maybe I'm looking at a different thing.
He can.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
A word to the wise, no personal information, don't give them it.
Yeah.
Particularly your bank account.
It also was in my junk folder, so.
Yeah.
I believe what that is, the state contracted with the International Assessors Association out of Kansas City, Missouri. They sent a survey. I think I got that survey as well. I think that's what you're looking at.
Okay.
It has to do with how the state is planning to do reevaluations in the future, whether the state does the work or the towns continue to do the work.
Great, thanks for that.
Okay. And you recommend that we complete that? It's worth our time.
That's up to you.
Okay. Okay.
Apparently, there's no danger in completing it.
Okay.
So that's good.
Okay.
Okay, other questions for John?
One
Yes,
comment, John, I just was wondering if you could just note for the record, the new deadline for the FERC relicensing
Yes.
comment period.
May 22nd Basically, it was a 30-day extension issued by FERC. So public comment continues to be welcome from anybody in the community. This is also applies for your individual comments, if you'd like to post your comments individually. And it also applies to the time in which a municipality like the town would have the opportunity to intervene in the FERC process.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks very much, Sean. All right, so we'll get to the board reports, motions, and ordinances. The first is the resolution for municipal planning grant designated officials. I thought I saw Lori, but she's going to present it. It's pretty straightforward.
Yes, and I believe she's probably hanging out upstairs, not realizing that we're way ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Ah,
Oh, okay,
there we
great. This is pretty
go.
straightforward.
Rick's number 2, so we can always flip flop.
Oh, Lori.
Hi, sorry, I need some business.
No, we're making
We're ahead of schedule.
like record time.
We're trying to cover some groundwork on another project. Okay, great. Well, this is kind of straightforward. We have a grant. It's a municipal planning grant for our update of our economic development chapter. And there are certain requirements that go along with that. And one of them is the assignment of individuals to specific activities or responsibilities. So, and when we have changes, and because we have had staff changes, new town manager and some change in the board, we need to go through that process. So I've laid out here what those 3 particular assignments are, or designations. And the proposed is primary municipal authorizing official. We would be removing Chair Michael Hoyt and assigning the town manager, John Haverstock. For the alternate municipal authorizing official, we would assign, the suggestion is to assign a Chair Michael Hoyt, Select Board Chair, and then the grant administration is done by me. And that would stay the same. So that's where we are. And that's
Questions for Lori on that?
There is a form at the end of the table that could be signed by everybody except for Mike Lee. For this appointment.
Okay,
Create for a motion.
I'm ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board sign the amended resolution for municipal planning grant. To assign the primary municipal authorizing official as town manager John Haverstock, and the alternate municipal authorizing official as Michael Hoyt, and the grant administrator as planning and development director Lori Hirschfeld.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Second from Sue. Any discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is review proposed utility appraiser contract. We have Rick here for that one.
Good evening. It's Rick Vincent, assessor. This is another very simple, very brief discussion. Couple of meetings back, you approved contracting with Brian Fogg to appraise the 2 dams in town during the revaluation. So this is the actual contract. So my recommendation is to sign the contract. However, I noticed just before the meeting, that's got a watermark as draft. So we may have to get another.
Well, you're just authorizing, asking them to authorize me to sign.
Right.
When I sign, I'll make sure it's not this draft.
Right.
Final version.
Sounds good. Any questions for Rick on this one? Mary?
Just a quick one. Is this one, it says at the top, signature CEO, is that nobody or the legislative body? I mean, it's missing Mike White, so I don't know if he's considered a CEO.
Oh, that's from the last one.
Oh, okay.
Because they're getting rid of me. But
Okay.
they're putting John. So this is
Okay.
from the prior.
Okay,
item.
all right, thank you.
Yep. Okay, any questions for Rick? Otherwise, I'll take a motion. Or we're not.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the Brian Fogg Utility Appraisal Contract as part of the 2025 townwide reappraisal project and authorize the town manager to sign the associated contract with Brian Fogg LLC.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
I
Okay,
just want to clarify that, because we did, this has come before us. I'm curious as to why we have to authorize the town manager to sign this at this point.
Well, somebody has to sign the contract, so either the board signs it or the town manager signs it.
I take your point, though, given that you've already approved the expenditure of a certain amount of money, maybe it's us with belts and suspenders on.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
we have a motion and I believe we have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thanks very much, Rick.
Thank you.
All right, now we're getting into a number of items, public works. So settle in. We've got Brian here. Chris is here as well. The first thing we're looking at though is the VTrans update on the Route 5 project.
I think we have presenters.
Do we have presenters?
Online.
Okay.
So first one would be Matt. He would be. I believe he's got two individuals, two team members also to make him a presenter.
Sir, panelists. Matt, is there anyone else I should bring over as a panelist?
Yeah, if you could also bring in Taylor Sisson and Sophia Schinzel. And if you're all right, I will share my screen.
Yes, please.
Do you have that option with the current permissions that you have?
I do, and let's see here. I hit the share button. Hopefully everyone can see the title sheet here.
Yep, we can see it.
Perfect. All right, and I see Taylor's joined me, and I believe Sophia. Oh, there she is. Perfect. So thank you for having us here. I'm going to do a vast majority of the talking, and of course, at the end of this, we'll open it up to questions. But we're here to give a quick update on the paving and signal composite contract that is kicking off in construction in the next coming couple of weeks.
Sorry, could you repeat that? We just had a little technical interruption.
Sure. Yep. So nothing, you didn't miss anything big. Just explaining we're here to give an update on the upcoming US 5 paving and signal projects that are going to be kicking off in construction in the next couple of weeks. On the call with me, we've kind of discussed a little bit. Taylor Sisson is the project manager on the signal side of things. Sophia Schinzel is here from WSP, who is going to be helping out with the public outreach. And I believe in the room with you is also Dylan Bianchi, who is the project's resident engineer. Any one of us can answer questions once we get to the end of this. I will jump right into this. I'll note that there were a couple of minor tweaks to the presentation that I sent last week. I noticed a couple of typos, and I'm very happy to send this updated version afterwards. I apologize, I didn't see the typos beforehand. So jumping right in, these are the project limits on the paving projects. I do say projects. As you drive through, you're not going to see any difference between the start and stop of any of them. It's one contiguous line. But essentially what happens is the project kicks off down at the Heartland-Hartford town line to the south. You can see at the bottom of the screen, and then continues north along US 5 until it reaches just south of the intersection of US 5 and Bugby Street. So in verbiage here, the STP PS24-2 project, which is the non-NHS portion of this project, begins at the Heartland-Hartford town line, as I had said, heads north along US 5 and stops at the I-91 southbound on and off ramps. And then it gaps out the middle section and picks up at the North Main Street intersection, continues up to that Bugby Street intersection. And then in the middle of this, again, this is just for tracking purposes, there is an NH portion or an NH project, National Highway System project, which is NHPS 24-3. That project basically fills in that gap. So it's on US 5 from the I-91 southbound ramps and extends up to the North Main Street intersection, which is at the large bridge over the railroad tracks in the river. The total project length, not broken out by the two different designations, is about 4.9 miles.
Yeah, and so hi, Matt introduced me. I'm Taylor Sisson. I'm the project manager for the signal portion of the project. So the signals will be replacing and upgrading are at 3 intersections. The 2 intersections up by the high school at Route 5 and Worcester Ave, and the Hanover Street Highland Ave. Those 2 intersections, those will be upgrades to the existing signal infrastructure that's there. And then the bottom image is the other intersection that will be totally replacing all of the signal equipment there. And that's at the Route 5 and North Main Street intersection.
All right, jumping back to the paving projects for a minute here. Talking about the scope. So there's a relatively defined line in the treatments that we are doing with this project. It basically is between the VA cutoff road and the I-91 southbound off ramps. There's the defined change. So from the beginning of the project up to the I-91 southbound off ramps, we're performing what we call a slab removal project. Basically, there are old concrete slabs that are about 9 feet wide, either side of center line, about 20 feet long. They were built in the 1930s and have subsequently been paved over and buried with your typical blacktop pavement. That is, it maintains an okay surface for a while, but obviously there's some detriment there when you have a concrete slab which does not move or is not flexible and you put a flexible material over top of it. So the state is coming in, and what we'll be doing is milling off the top amount of pavement. We will take out the existing concrete slab, fill in that void space with a new gravel material, a new engineered gravel material, and then we'll pave a new paved structure on top of that that's designed to handle the traffic volumes that we see out there. This segment is about 2.8 miles from the beginning of the project. And then, like I said, it extends basically up around the curve to VA cutoff road. It just gets beyond that. And then the slabs end, and then we will transition into the other paving treatment here, which is your more typical, if you were to tell anybody that there's going to be a paving job going on, that's really what we're doing on the remainder of the project. So what we'll do is we'll come in and perform about a 2-inch mill. It's a 2.25-inch mill. Then we'll do a full width leveling course to really true up that surface to make sure we've got something good and solid to pave over. And then we'll place a wearing surface on top of that. It'll be generally speaking, within the existing pave limits that are out there. There are a couple of minor areas that we'll talk about here in a minute, where we'll extend a little bit beyond that. But for the most part, you should see basically no change in the road that you see out there, other than obviously it'll be a lot smoother. And there's a couple of lane reconfigurations. Again, we'll jump into that. Project wide, we'll also be looking at guardrail. There will be some upgrades, some full-blown replacements in the slab removal section, just due to some of the grade changes. We get the benefit in removing the slabs. We get the benefit of performing some geometry improvements. So some of the guardrail will be pulled out and replaced with brand new. Other areas of the project, there will be just maintenance repairs to the existing guardrail. There shouldn't be a lot of changes in the areas, especially once you get into the mill and fill sections. Down in that southern section that I had referenced before, there might be a couple of minor tweaks, but generally speaking, where you see guardrail today, you'll see guardrail at the end of the project. On top of that, obviously, when we go through and we mill the pavement or we take all the pavement out, there will be no lines left. So we will be doing new lines. We'll do a little bit of drainage maintenance with the project, a lot of ditching, some minor culvert replacements, and then a little bit of under drain in the southern section. And then lastly, with this project, the entire corridor was looked at for the inclusion of centerline rumble stripes, having to meet the criteria. And I'll jump into that a little bit further in this next slide here. So a couple of noteworthy items, and that was my transition. I love it when I put my bullet right in the right spot. So the centerline rumble strips, as I had mentioned, it's only where they meet the designated criteria according to what VTrans has set forward as the standard. Basically, this means in any area that the speed limit is at 45 miles an hour or greater, you have 14 feet of pavement on either side of the yellow line, and you have enough traffic volume, that's areas that we would consider putting in centerline rumble stripes. This basically means from the beginning of the project up to roughly the bridges over US 5 before you get to VA Cutoff Road are areas that we looked at it and we have included them. In any area where there's a residence that falls within 100 feet of centerline, the centerline rumble stripes will gap those residencies 100 feet either side of the house. So you'll have a 200-foot gap plus whatever the house distance is. It's really just to try to mitigate the noise impacts and, you know, understanding that these do have a noise impact. We're trying to minimize that as much as possible, but also get them installed wherever we can because they are a low-cost safety upgrade. Additionally, there are a couple of items that were pulled out of US 5 scoping studies. One of them is the corridor scoping study, which is called for a road diet. So from the Sykes Ave roundabout through the end of the project, that scoping study, which was performed by Stantec and had collaboration with the town of Hartford and VTrans, we're going to be dropping a lane and we'll be installing a buffered bike lane in either direction. There are a couple of other minor upgrades throughout there, but that's going to be the most substantial thing that you'll see different is that instead of 2 lanes in either direction, you'll have a single lane in either direction with a buffered bike lane. Additionally, there is a US 4 and US 5 scoping study at the intersection that you can see on the screen here. Part of that scoping study basically the scoping study identified 2 alternatives. One was a short term and one was a long term. The long term, I think, is probably the one that most people are aware of, which is a roundabout at this intersection. The short term alternative promoted the road diet along US 5, and it also called for the removal of one of the slip lanes at this intersection to help promote that safer travel for bicyclists through the intersection. So I'm not sure, can you see my mouse on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. So the slip lane that's going to be removed, I wanted to be clear about it because I think there were some questions about it in the past. The slip lane to be removed is this one, which is US 5 or coming off from US 5 and turning on to US 4. We will be essentially just not paving this or removing the top pavement and then putting grass seed down. We'll not be reshaping anything. We're leaving the landing as it stands today, but it will be grass. That comes with a turn lane and a little bit of modification to the inside corner to make sure that trucks can make that turn easily. On the other side of this intersection, the slip lane coming from US 4 onto US 5 southbound, we're aware that the town is very much in favor of keeping this, and I believe that that's something that's going to be continued on through the roundabout. Taylor, you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but we do know, like I said, that the town wants to keep this slip lane, and there are some valid concerns with trucks coming off from US 4 and making the climb. So this project will keep 2 lanes on US 5 climbing the hill out of this intersection. It does incorporate the buffered bike lanes through the intersection. And then as part of this project, just to make sure that we can keep that continuation of the bike lanes up the hill, we're doing a minor amount of widening on the right side of the road, or what would be in this picture on the top side of the picture or on this side, to make sure that we have adequate space to mark that bike lane and have that continuation of services from the bridge and up to Sykes Ave. So I wanted to point that out a little bit clearly, or a little bit more depth, just to be sure that everybody was aware. And then, like I said, we will definitely open this up to questions at the end. Finally, as part of this project, the town has an upcoming upcoming sidewalk project that's going to extend from Arboretum Lane up to Veterans Drive. I did come down and present very similar or very, very much the same presentation a little while back. But essentially the project, the VTrans resurfacing project, is taking on some of that drainage as part of that work, in an effort to not duplicate efforts or create a situation where some new drainage has to be put in to what we freshly paved. So there are some drainage upgrades that'll take place right in the corner, just as you come out from underneath of the I-91 bridges, just before VA Cutoff Road.
Okay, so a couple of things about the scope of the signal project. I think I kind of alluded to some of them already, but So the three signals that we'll be doing some upgrades on as part of this project are all owned and maintained by the state. So these are kind of asset-driven replacement and upgrades to aging equipment types of work that we're going to be doing with this project. So again, the Worcester Ave and Hanover Street, Highland Ave, those two intersections by the high school are a little less invasive. We're basically replacing a lot of the equipment that exists at those intersections just with newer, more state-of-the-art equipment. So new controllers that run the intersections, the new signal heads up on the mast arms or at the high school intersection, the pedestal poles, replacing detection at both. So the mast arms at the Worcester Ave intersection, those that are existing will stay in place. The scope of work at the North Main Street intersection is a little more involved. Basically, the main difference is we'll be replacing the old pedestal mounted signal heads that are out at that intersection. And I guess it does have the one mast arm. We'll be replacing all of that infrastructure with new mast arms, the big black cantilevered signals that you see throughout the state, kind of our new standard. And then same other types of work, new signal heads, new vehicle detection, new controller and cabinet. And then I'll move to the next slide, Matt. So to tie in with the buffered bike lanes throughout the project, there are going to be some lane configuration and intersection changes at North Main Street to go along with the new signal infrastructure. So Route 5 turning on to the bridge headed north will only have one left turn lane instead of two as it does today. And then coming off of the bridge headed towards Route 4, that will be just one vehicular lane for cars to make either the right or left movement coming off of that. And to tie in with some of the bike lane improvements that are going on with the project, will be those bike lanes will continue through this intersection, and we'll be installing some bike signals with push buttons to help bicyclists navigate the intersection. They'll have their own phase as part of the signal operation to help them cross more safely. We also we'll have a signalized pedestrian crossing to go along with that. And then again, to help improve the bicyclist safety and to tie in with the buffered bike lanes, we'll be doing a little bit of reconfiguration on the northeast corner. It says northwest, northeast corner, where there's a slip lane coming off of North Main Street onto the bridge. So we will be modifying that kind of pork chop island that exists today with another raised concrete island to basically get rid of that slip lane that's out there now. And that's just really to help reduce the conflict points that vehicles would have with bikes navigating the intersection. And we have kind of a stamped concrete island there that would be trucks could use to make that move if they're taking the right-hand turn from North Main Street across the bridge. We'll also be removing kind of the median island, the grassed median island that exists on North Main Street. Yep. We'll be removing that as part of this intersection reconfiguration too.
All right, so we will talk a little bit more in depth about the construction schedule right at the end. I have a couple of slides just to kind of run through what you can expect as you're traveling through. Generally speaking, the work is going to kick off in May of 2024, so that's not very far away from now, just a couple weeks out. And the project is a single season. So we do expect that, per the contract language, this will be a single season of major construction work. There may be a little bit of spillover into the following year if there's some punch list items or a significant amount of rain delays. Hopefully we don't have the kind of rain that we saw last year. But those all factor into the contract. So just jumping in really quickly, these are taken from these pictures that I'm going to show are taken from another project that has been going on of the same type of scope. So it was a slab removal project, very similar. The slabs underneath were circa the 1920s, 30s, and we performed the exact same type of treatment. So the first thing that you're going to see down in that southern section is we're going to take off most of the existing top of the pavement. Contractors will take that back. Some of it will produce a recycled asphalt pavement, which can get used later, can get used in some of the hot mixes or shoulder aggregate materials. But essentially what we're trying to do is get it out of the way as much as possible and get down to those concrete slabs. Up next, and these are, like I said, these are actual photos from the slab removal project. This is a 1920s concrete slab from the roadway. They're going to get pulled out. They'll get broken up and they'll be hauled off to an approved waste site. From there, we'll come back in with that engineered gravel or the spec gravel. In this, and I included this picture because there's a picture of a rover off to the side here. We will be doing some grade modifications just to try to get the road a little bit back into what the design shape should be. We'll have a couple of areas where we won't quite be able to meet that and they'll have to be down posted, or they at least meet the design standards that we have. So there should be some improved super elevation as you travel through. But that will all take place during this phase where we're doing some fine grading and filling in that void space that was left over by pulling out the old concrete slabs. Finally, the point that this turns back into a more traditional paving is we'll pave the base course for this. It is in case you're interested, it's a type 2 super pave, which is kind of our more structural layer. It provides a pretty good base for the rest of the road to be built on top of. Should smooth things up nice and quickly. And then from there, we'll have a couple of more lifts of pavement that will come back in again to carry those traffic loads that we've got on that section of roadway. All right, as I had said, we're very close to the end here. The high level schedule. So I noted before the work is going to kick off in May. They have submitted their schedule and we're working through the last puzzle pieces to let them hit the ground running. So they should be kicking off in the next couple of weeks. The direction they're going to start in based on their schedule, they're going to begin work down at the Heartland town line and head north along US 5, starting up with that milling process that I had shown a few slides back. The slab removal section, so the more invasive dirt work, they will be completing that through a vast majority of the summer. They are showing right now they should be finished up mid-August timeframe, of course, weather permitting and everything. They are also going to be accelerating the milling process in various areas just to try to keep things working and keep the project moving as quickly as possible or feasible. So after they're completed the milling down to the southern section of the project, they're actually going to stop when the concrete slabs stop in the pavement. And then they're going to jump to the northern section of the project and start milling back towards the US 5 and Vermont 14 US 4 intersection. That should be completed in early June. And then the last segment that's going to get filled in there for milling should be complete in August. That's basically from the I-91 southbound on and off ramps down to the bridge, the big bridge and the North Main Street intersection. The final paving is shown to start in August timeframe. This does not mean that you'll be driving on a milled surface or a gravel surface for that entire time. There are some contract restrictions in there to make sure that they get those things covered up. The leveling should be placed within 2 weeks of the milling taking place. Of course, there are some variabilities in there, but they will come back in and put a pavement course down, so you won't be driving on that milled surface for a very long time. So again, final paving starts in August, continues until about mid to late September, very likely. The final markings are going to start in September once they get a good amount of area that they can start laying those down, and they'll continue right through the end of the project in October. And then the last few pieces here are the signal projects. As their schedule shows, They should be completing the full upgrade at that North Main Street intersection in September. So that'll be during the test period. That should be, brand new functional system in the September time period. And then the two signals that are up near the high school, the US 5 Worcester Ave and the Highland and Hanover Street signals, those should be completed in July. They're a little bit less invasive. It's, as Taylor had talked about, just more componentry upgrades. So we expect that those will be done in July of this year.
Great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia Schinzel, and I'm the Public Information Consultant with WSP. Here is my contact information. Please write it down. Feel free to reach out with any questions regarding the project construction. If you need any more information, if you scan this QR code, it will take you to a sign up sheet to sign up for our weekly construction updates, which is the best way to get information about the project. That will have any traffic alerts, detours, or any important information that you might need. There's also a link to the fact sheet as well. And then Dylan is on site with a physical sign-in sheet as well, and we can collect your information that way to get you on our email list.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Question from the board? Benny?
Yeah, just one question I guess I had, or a couple of them. Was there ever a study done in terms of the amount of bike traffic there was in this area?
So I believe that was part of the scoping study when the US 5 corridor scoping study that had taken place that I had alluded to. Like I had said, that was developed by Stantec, but it was in partnership with VTrans in the town of Hartford. So the upgrades that were presented in that were taking in a lot of input from the town of Hartford, and then became fully vetted through VTrans in the town to produce that preferred alternative. So
you don't know the counts, right? You don't know the traffic counts for bicycle traffic?
I do not. I was not involved in the scoping study, so I do not.
Just seems like there's a lot of bike traffic lanes put in there for what little traffic I've seen for bikes traveling up through there. We're giving it quite a bit of roadway in order to have bike lanes on both sides of the road. I just wonder why it couldn't be put all on one side with a divided line painted in there for bike travel.
Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned earlier on, we took the final product, which was signed off on by all parties, and took that preferred alternative as what we wanted to try to incorporate as much as possible into this resurfacing job. So my understanding and my involvement with it is that this is the option that the town had wanted to move forward with, and VTrans had gone through and done the vetting process internally as well. So that's really where the derivation of those lanes came from.
Okay. More questions then?
It's going to happen regardless of whether the town has the input or not at this point. So,
I mean, I don't think people would bike on it. I wouldn't want to bike on it.
I know, but the thing is that we're taking up a large section of the road for bike travel lanes, and there's a lot of traffic on that road going north and south, and we're losing the lane either way now. It just seems like a lot to lose for what little bike traffic there is on the highway. But
Randy, do you have a question?
The big Route 4 and 5 bridge over the White River there, I've noticed it has some rather large expansion joints there and a couple rather deep holes on the bridge itself.
Wait, which bridge?
The
one near Bugby.
over,
Okay.
yeah, over the White River, Route 4 and 5. It's rough, and I figure I wanted to know whether you're anticipating whether any of those conditions might be rectified with this project, considering it's like the whole of Route 5 in our town.
Sure. Yeah, that's a fair question. So the the work that will take place on the bridge, we're really from the resurfacing side of things. We do try to minimize our impacts to the bridge as much as possible. Now, that being said, there are some elements within the contract to try to help some of those areas and try to extend the lifetime of the bridge as much as possible. So there will be some rapid set concrete material that can get placed into some of those holes that may show up. There's also an item for a bituminous surface prep. So basically get in there and try to patch things together and keep the water out as much as possible. But we will be doing as minimal of a lift of pavement across that as we can. Usually it dips down to about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches mil in pave over top. At the expansion joints, we do call for the replacement or the installation of what we call an asphaltic approach material, which is basically a rubberized in granular material that we put on either side of the joint or across the plug joint, and that really smooths out the roadway. It takes out the material, the pavement material that we know deteriorates really quickly because we can't get compaction up against that concrete. And replaces it with this more premium material that has a little bit of flexibility to it and just gives a much better riding surface across. So we are aware of the condition of the bridge. In the background, I am aware that there is at least a scoping effort at this point. I can't speak to it much more than that because I'm not knowledgeable on it. But at a minimum, there is a scoping effort that's taking place to evaluate that bridge, its condition, and then any alternatives to either whatever scope of treatment needs to be provided out of that, whether it's a full replacement or a deck replacement. So there is some future project that is coming that will address just the bridge, and then the resurfacing job will do our darndest to make sure the holes are filled in, make sure that we try to keep water up and out of that concrete, off from the concrete, and then you'll have a brand new paved surface across the full length of it. We'll do our best to tie in those bridge joints and create the we have a pretty good proven record with this material, so you should get a nice smooth ride across those bridge joints as well.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Kim?
Thanks. I guess I did a pretty deep dive into this, and I want to empathize with Lanny's frustration because watching the progression of it, I see how we got here. I'm on board with it, but basically it was a matter of we get a presentation to the board, and it's like if the board resists, it stops the whole process, and then so the board, acquiesces and goes with recommendations of the state, and then these basically there were several discussions for which after the slip ramp on I-91 was taken out, people were really upset about it. I think there is still a longer term plan for a traffic light to go in there. There's this plan for a signal there, which hopefully will resolve that to some extent, maybe also traffic light by the VA. So I guess one question would be if there's any idea of when those additional traffic signals would be going in by the VA hospital and by the on-ramp to I-91 South. Matt, can you answer that?
I can
Taylor
jump
can.
in.
Yep.
So I'm working right now on trying to secure funding to start design for signals at the 91 ramps and at the Veterans Drive or VA Cutoff Road, I should say, those intersections. So hopefully we'll be able to start taking a look at that in design soon.
Okay, but we're probably a couple years out.
From construction, like signals in the ground, yeah, probably a few years out still.
Okay. So I guess I bristle a little bit when it's framed in a way as that this is what the town wanted. So I just want to express that publicly because it's what the town was presented with, and the town basically, I am not an engineer, and I trust that what is brought before us is in the best interest of the town, but I wouldn't say that it was based on what we wanted as town representatives. But how I'm starting to get on board with this is thinking about this reference to it being called a road diet, how it was described in one of the meetings was that whenever these roads were, the Route 5 multi-lane, 2 lanes on each side, 4-lane highway, was built during a time when there was anticipation of a big development and that, you know, we were gonna have all this traffic going up and down there. And that this is just sort of like cycling around to that we're gonna actually try to like slow the traffic down and add the pedestrian and bicycle access. And so I'm kind of liking the idea of that. I think honestly, like that it could be an attraction for bicycle groups and things like that. Like I think it can be, but one thing I would hope, and I think this is ultimately gonna be the town's responsibility, is that in those median areas, particularly along Route 5 or like that pork chop island you described, if we can add some green to it, some like, so it's not all just more cement streetscape, like that would be, I think, a way to say like, okay, we're going to make this more pedestrian friendly, more bike friendly. It should also be just more attractive and inviting to the movement of pedestrians and bicycles.
Yeah, so if I can jump in really quickly on the. Sorry, I didn't mean to be interrupting somebody.
Oh, no, please continue.
So I just wanted to touch really quickly on the road diet element of this in dropping the lane and adding these bicycle lanes in either direction. So it is, you know, that while it does seem novel to this area, it's not something that we haven't done across the state in other areas. And typically during that scoping process, they would have evaluated the traffic volumes to ensure that, you know, it makes sense and can handle the capacities. And you had kind of alluded to it that, you know, the area was a little bit overbuilt, and that's where we ended up with that more divided highway look, where you had the 2 lanes in either direction. So you know, taking some of that space and you know, repurposing it and using the bike lanes, you know, again, the scoping study was really involved in the town's input. So, you know, dedicating that additional space to the buffered bike lanes was something that was suggested and wanted at the time. And that volume aspect of it for vehicular volume would have been something that was looked at in that scoping study. And it is something that, you know, we've converted other areas with similar traffic volumes or higher in some cases to, you know, dropping down from 2 lanes in either direction to a single lane in either direction. And in some of those cases, put in a center line or a 2-way left turn lane in the middle of the road as well. And, you know, we've had pretty good success with those.
I appreciate that. And just one last question. When there are culverts that are going to be replaced, do you have, I mean, is that something that is easy to find out that they're larger capacity? I feel like every time there's an opportunity to replace a culvert, they're should be built for 100-year storms, things like that.
Yeah, great question. So the culverts that are being replaced in the southern section of this project. So we, again, kind of breaking up the project into 2 sections. In that slab removal section, because we're getting down into the dirt, we will be doing some replacements of the culverts in that area. In order for those to be elements that I can bring forward in a project and make sure I deliver the project when it's needed, they have to be of the smaller diameter and drainage culverts only. So when I say smaller diameter, I mean 36-inch or 3-foot culverts or less. Some of those culverts are very old and they're much smaller than that. Some of them are 12 inches or 15 inches, and our state minimum standard now is 18 inches. So some of those will be updated to a little bit larger size, but none of these would be associated with a stream of any sort, which would would require environmental permitting and a hydraulic study. These are not of that size or capacity.
Awesome, thank you.
Questions, Ida and then Lenny?
Hi, yeah, just because I know a lot of constituents will be really excited to hear about the prioritization of the bike lanes in this proposal. Can you just verify like the length of stretch of road that will have new bike lanes added? Like from where to where exactly?
Yeah, so the outline of the bike lanes where you're going to see the major change is essentially starting at, I'm going a long project. So beginning at the Sykes Ave roundabout, and then heading down into town, that will all have a buffered bike lane on either side. It will continue across the large bridge that we had talked about, and then we'll continue up the hill to the high school. So a pretty large portion. It's a roughly a 2-mile section in the project that's going to receive that road diet and buffered bike lane treatment.
Okay, yeah, that's really exciting. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I want to revisit the signals again. Do you have a cost estimate on what it's going to take to replace the entire signal structures that we're referring to?
I think the total cost for all 3 intersections for signal work was around 1.1 million off the top of my head.
So I'm sorry, I have a tough time with that because we have functioning signals right now. And in the state of Vermont, we're looking at a significant loss of tax dollars going to, or money going to education, which is filtering down to the towns. And we're replacing signals for purely aesthetic reasons. I understand the functionality aspect of signals, but it seems like we're replacing all these functional light posts and arms out there just for the sake of aesthetics. And we are in such a shortfall, the state of Vermont. To me, it's ridiculous to spend all the money on aesthetics when we have such a shortfall of money that could be going toward our education of our kids. I find it preposterous we're spending all this money like that. That's a lot of money to spend just on signals.
It is. I guess I would say the North Main Street intersection, I believe, is one of our oldest signals in the state. And I know from talking, and coordinating closely with our signal maintenance group and operations group, I think that signal gives them quite a bit of headache to keep it running well. So that one is in real need of being replaced. So the upgrades we're making are definitely not just for aesthetics, but to cut down on maintenance visits and to make sure that a signal is a safety feature. So keeping that running is pretty important at a busy intersection. So definitely the upgrades we're doing are based on safety and continued operation moving forward, not just aesthetics.
Thank you. Community kills 1.3 million.
Okay, Brandon, and then we have a hand up on Zoom.
I've been hearing a lot of the term buffered bike lanes. Just for those lay people out there, I just would like a definition. Is that the kind of semi-permanent pylon things are kind of glued to the street, or?
So that is sorry, I hope I'm not making anybody dizzy by doing this. So that is something that could be installed with some projects, but that is not something that we were doing here. A buffered bike lane, as it pertains to this project, is essentially creating a space between where we're going to define where the bikes are going to ride and where the vehicles are going to travel. When you travel around the state, and as you can see in this picture, these hatched lines are meant to show a pavement marking. So essentially what you're going to have is a difference between, you'll have a white line that you'll drive next to, it'll be an 11-foot lane. You'll have a white line that you'll drive next to. There'll be an area that is hatched in the middle, or there'll be diagonal lines. And then there'll be a bike lane to the outside of that. So when we say buffered bike lane, it just means that we're creating a space so that it's not vehicles, single 4-inch white line, and then bikes riding. It's now going to be an 11-foot lane. There's area, it varies a little bit as you travel up the hill. In this particular image, it says that it's about a 7-foot buffer space. So again, that's that diagonal space that's hatched out. And then you'll have a 6-foot bike lane next to it. So it's just creating that space that vehicles are not allowed to enter into, not supposed to enter into, and pushing bicyclists a little bit further away to create that buffer as we're talking about.
Great, thank you. We have someone on Zoom.
Go ahead, Upper Valley Haven.
Yes, hi, Michael Redmond from the Haven and White River Junction. Just while I have you here, I have a interest in the roundabout at that intersection of routes 4 and 5. I wondered if you could provide an update on the timing of when you think that construction was going to occur.
Yeah, so I'm the project manager for that project also. So we're currently at kind of the end of preliminary plans. So we will have some impacts to private properties at the intersection. So we're about to enter into like our right-of-way acquisition phase, and still shooting for construction in 2027 or 2028.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. More questions from the board? Seeing none, thank you very much for giving us this presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having
Appreciate
us.
your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, our next item is the update on the Gate Street Fairview Terrace. We'll take that and then we'll see what time it is after that and see whether it coincides with our regular break time. So I'll turn it over to Brian and Chris. If either one of you wants it, or to John.
It's Chris Lathrop should be on.
Hi,
There he is.
is it presenting?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Good evening. My name's Chris Lathrop. Thanks for having me. John asked that I come on and give a brief update on the project. So
Great.
this is for the Gate Street and Fairview Terrace. And this is a fairly current photo here of, as you are well aware, the Gate Street was
We're kind of
closed.
like halfway
Yeah,
between your presentation. I don't know if it needs to be in like slideshow or something, because we're on, basically we have the outstanding tasks slide and then a bit from the prior, the next slide.
Interesting.
Looks like the scroll bar is halfway down your presentation on the right-hand side.
Or you might have multiple screens and you think you're showing us the one screen and you're
That's the
actually.
first slide.
That's the
There we
problem. There we go. Thank you very much. Okay, so again, this is Gate
Can you
Street.
zoom in a bit? Sorry. Could you just zoom in a little bit? It's a small. We were seeing
So
like
it's like one
two
slide
slides
per
at once.
screen.
Yeah.
Still?
Yeah, you're still showing us the not presentation screen.
How's that?
No change.
We see 1.5 slides at the beginning of your slide.
So like
Go to
if you normally
slideshow
have
beginning.
if you normally have multiple monitors, the problem is that you think you're showing us one monitor and you're actually showing us the other.
Hold on.
There we go.
Awesome. Sorry about that. So again, this is the picture here is Gate Street. As you're well aware, it's been closed down for a couple of years due to the failure of retaining wall on the low side. So Jersey barrier has been placed to keep folks away from the low side, and it has allowed the portion between the Jersey barrier and the wall on the upper side for pedestrians to walk up and down. So, as I said, John asked me to come on, give you a project overview, talk about the project status, share the current opinion of probable construction costs, and then open it up to any questions.
Great.
So this is the project area. What's in dark gray here is the anticipated limits of work that would be repaved. The lighter gray along both sides, along here, and then along lower side of Gate Street is intended for installing a 5-foot sidewalk raised with a curb. The existing Gate Street, as you know, is two-way. The proposal would be for to reduce that to a 16-foot lane in one direction down the hill. What's in green here is quite a significant slope, 1.5 slope down to a proposed toe wall, which would be a precast concrete toe wall. I have a picture of that going forward, but and then the green in front of that is the additional limits of disturbance in order to install the wall and the slope repairs. So what's been done to date? We've gone out and done a topographical survey of the project area that was conducted in, I believe, summer of 22. A boundary survey was performed along the parcels being affected on the low side for the wall and the slope. Borings were conducted winter of 23. And then since then, there's been multiple wall solutions analyzed, toe wall, as well as a crest wall, multiple types. We looked at steel sheeting. We've looked at, precast concrete walls, which was ultimately chosen. But the many iterations of different solutions were analyzed and finally came up with some doable solutions. And we came to the board on August 22nd, 23. And at that meeting, the precast concrete toe wall solution was accepted. And that's what we've moved forward with into preliminary design. So since then, we further developed the plans and submitted preliminary plans to the town in February. So going forward, the outstanding tasks will be to develop easement plans, which we've been working on, for the town to acquire rights on the properties to, or easements to maintain the slope and retaining wall. It will also require some temporary construction easements as well for the contractor to get in there and actually do the construction. We need to confirm the permit requirements. We're kind of on the edge of potentially a construction stormwater permit. There's no wetlands that we're aware of. I'm sorry, that's a construction general permit. No stormwater permit. We believe. And then just recently we found that there's a threatened and endangered Fowler toad in your area. So we do need to coordinate with Fish and Wildlife to see if there's anything that needs to be done in relationship to that for permitting. Beyond that, there's a little bit further utility coordination, particularly with the Consolidated Communications, which has conduits in the roadway going down Gate Street, and then move to final plan specifications and estimates for bidding. So this is a typical section. This particular one is a cut right about where Gate Street and Fairview Terrace diverge. As you can see, it's quite a large fill slope down to a precast concrete block retaining wall. And the reason for that is the geotechnical engineers ran analysis, and it's required to have this type of weight basically to bring the global stability into acceptable ranges. So this is just an example of what the wall could look like. There's multiple different facings and such, but there'd be basically a retaining wall at the bottom, and then the entire slope would be stone, but then could be topsoil seeded and mulched, so it could be grass and not just a big stone slope. So currently we have the construction cost estimate coming in at about 3.4 million if it was constructed in 2025. We've estimated the right-of-way acquisition at approximately 128. There's significant right-of-way area needed on several parcels, so it's a fairly big number. Construction inspection, we've estimated at about 120, and that assumes one person full-time during the construction. So until we move forward and get your desires on who or how many people and if it's full-time, et cetera, that could go up or down. So as a total, 3.7 million approximately if constructed next year. John also asked if we put together if we wait or if the schedule gets pushed out, some type of escalation for a 2026 construction. So doing some research, the average would be about a 6% inflation rate for construction year after year. So that raises the cost of construction to approximately 3.6. Assuming the right-of-way was pushed a year, that's about 135. Construction inspection, 127, for a grand total of about 3.9. So next steps. Once we provided the preliminary plans and estimate, I know the town would like to take that estimate and put it to bond vote to fund the project. So there's a couple options. We can continue to proceed and seek the right-of-way acquisition in advance of that bond vote, as well as proceed the final plans and have those on the shelf ready to go. Or you can wait for the bond vote and then proceed. So there's a risk either way. Obviously, if you put it to bond vote and don't get the funding, you're spending money putting together the right-of-way plans and final plans. But if you wait for the bond vote, I don't believe they'll be able to construct in 2025. So that's a decision for the town.
My question would be, what sort of a contractual arrangement do you have with the town now? Is there funding in place for you to proceed to final design without any additional money from the town, or has that already been budgeted, and are you funded to the completion of design work?
So we were funded through design plans. We did go, as we mentioned in the meeting the other day, we did end up doing more analysis of multiple iterations than intended or was originally scoped. Chris could talk to this as well, but we had, I think, 3 alternatives in the original scope. And when we came to, after analyzing those and came back to the town, those were all deemed to be they weren't feasible. So we proceeded forward and did a couple other iterations.
Can we proceed with final design without having yet purchased easements?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's just I'm just saying that I'm just stating that it's I don't know how likely it is for you to get a bond vote or not. So all I'm stating is if you did not get the voters' approval, we've spent the money developing the plans. That's all I was alluding to.
Right. John, what's a typical bond period for something of this nature?
You mean about how many years?
Yeah, how many years?
Payments? I did talk to the bond bank earlier today and asked them to run 20 and 30-year debt service numbers, and I can tell you what those are if you're interested in knowing.
Please.
That. Yeah.
If we're going to present it to voters, it'd be nice to know.
Of course. And we were talking earlier about maybe a bond vote as early as this fall in conjunction with the presidential election. So a 20-year bond at about 3.95% with interest rates varying until you lock in would be something on the order of $195,000 a year in principal and 2 semi-annual payments totaling about $150,000. This is in the first year or 2. Of course, the interest payment will decline over time. So after 10 years, you're still at that $195,000 in principal, but a combined interest payment over 2 semi-annual payments of about $80,000.
Did you by chance break that down based on what it would be for tax purposes on a $200,000 house?
I did not go that far, no.
It would be interesting to understand, because that's what a voter looks at. How much is this
Of
going to
course.
impact my taxes?
Of course.
It would be interesting if you could break it down into what the actual values would be for
Sure.
that.
And of course, maybe our engineer can tell us what's the useful life of this project in terms of these estimates, but I can tell you that with a 30-year bond at a net interest cost of about 4.2% as laid out by the bond bank, the annual principal payment's 130. The initial interest payment over those 2 semi-annual payments is about 160,000. After 10 years, it's down to about 115,000, and after 20 years, it's down to about 60,000.
Is this a 100-year wall? 100-year project as far as the?
I mean,
Well, we got in.
go ahead, Chris.
At the last decision making, when we presented the wall options to you, you recall that was the big discussion.
Yeah.
So we did our own research in-house, basically on these wall types. The product is currently proposing the Ready Rock. We don't know how long it is because it's exceeding life expectancy already, but typical concrete block wall is in excess of 50 years. So,
However, the bond bank doesn't finance that far out.
No, I'm just trying to figure out what gives you the best bang for the buck over longevity. I hate to see this come back before the voters in my lifetime to pay for this. I mean, probably won't, but the other question I guess I had, and it's probably for our own public works department, is we were measuring the displacement of that wall. Are we still measuring that displacement, or do we know what it's moved since?
We haven't been measuring it. Sometimes it wasn't moving, then it started moving. It is subject to frost freeze. The movement was frost freeze movement. So
when it moves during frost freeze, does it settle back down after the
some
freeze
years
cycle?
it does, some years it didn't move back down.
And
There was
how
no
much
trend. There was
How
no
much has it
exact
been
trend.
displaced from original measurement? Do you know?
I can't tell you that off the top of my head. That's quite a few years ago that we
Right,
stopped
well,
measuring.
Just there was a big concern about safety with that wall, and that it was going to give way. That's why we shut it down. And it's concerned about how it's been moving since then.
So that concern is still there. A bigger concern than the wall is the fact the void under the roadway is getting bigger because the fines are going through the dry laid stone wall at the bottom of the hill. We've been through these iterations and the politics. The one thing I will remind you all, if we stop altogether and don't make this improvement and say, let's just put a bike lane up on the original roadbed and grade off the hill there, that's behind Maple Wood Terrace. That's a true scenario. But a bigger concern is along Fairview Terrace, that concrete precast wall, has got a major horizontal crack in it halfway down. And that is, there's no cheap way out of that one. That holds that road above the Bugby Center and all in place.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a big expense if you take out. I had looked into this, like if we simplified the project with another consultant before they came on board, and the price difference because of the amount of work it takes to even do that, it was minor. It was like you can put it back fully, right, as one lane with a sidewalk and all, and it wasn't going to be extraordinarily more expensive because the geotechnical work, everything to stabilize that going up, you're doing, whether you're doing it for a slightly wider road or a narrow road. So we can keep talking this to death, or
I think we've settled on what the design's going to be. My other question in regards to this is, we've already moved the water on the road, so that's been taken care of. Is there still sewer underneath the
sewer's in pretty decent shape? The main way of taking care of that right now is during this upgrade. There may be some portions that have to be relayed, but I believe slip lining and manhole rehabilitation would be the minimal amount of work on it. So
What's the depth on that as far as depth of, for the sewer, do you know?
off the top of my head. no, it's
You know, I'm just
normal.
wondering if
It's
it would be,
normal 6-8 feet.
so would the road be taken down that far? Or the,
We're actually raising the road.
Say
So
that again, please?
yeah, sorry. So the wall on the upper side was also looked at for stability, and they were originally talking about like pinning it, but we've chosen to if you raise Gate Street about 2 feet, it brings the ratio within tolerance to stabilize that wall.
Raise the road. Interesting.
It's not quite 2 feet.
What's that?
It's not quite 2 feet, and every inch matters there. But
Yeah.
And Chris, would you mind to stop sharing your screen?
Sure.
And then I also don't know if this, I guess this is, Chris kind of answered my question. So regarding the easements and right of ways, that's nothing that can be pursued until after, if a bond is approved?
no, we can start pursuing, and we've reached out to attorneys already and begun that process.
To identify what would be needed.
Yeah, and
I mean-
we're gonna have to start the discussions earlier than not with the landowners.
That's, I guess, I mean, full disclosure, like I know people in that right there on the bottom of Maplewood Terrace, and they want to know. They keep asking like, what's happening, what's
Yeah,
going on,
They
and
want
so
it fixed.
I mean,
My concern is incurring cost before we know with absolute certainty that we're going forward. And he's telling us that we don't have to negotiate these easements at this stage. So my question for the engineer is, what's his timetable to get to final design and having final cost estimates that could then support more precisely a bond vote?
I think we're at a point where you can go to a bond vote with the numbers we've provided. I mean, maybe you escalate those up, some, but furthering the design isn't going to refine our estimate very much.
Okay.
And I don't want to disagree with John, he's my boss,
Feel free.
but easements always hold us up on things. The earlier we start the conversations with the landowners, the better. I mean, what we're doing is for their benefit.
yeah,
They were the biggest proponents of this. So I'm not saying we obtain the easement, but we put the effort in place and get the base set so that we're on good terms.
so if someone asks me what's going on, I can just say, give Chris a call at Public Works.
Well, yeah, I think that the thing would be is we want to have in place, they're on board with it, right? So we're not gonna,
Right.
as a property owner, you're not gonna give us the easement if we're not gonna do the project. So we want to have them on board. We have the documents ready to be drawn up. The bond vote goes through if it's approved. Then we move forward. It should be a fairly simple process to go through at that time.
True, I mean,
Anyway.
you can imagine, people in that particular position are feeling uncertain and want more information, that's all. So
We can do that legwork up front.
Should there be a time for the select board to have a discussion as to whether they would like to ask the voters to make an investment that large in this project? Or have you already committed to that in your prior dealings before I got involved?
I mean, my understanding is that we were doing this preliminary engineering estimate to then, but I don't think we have voted as a board to get a bond on the ballot, but I think, I mean.
There have been many meetings with the public to direct the project and the layout of the project and to get it resolved. I mean, we're here tonight because of public concern and outcry over it, so.
I mean, but it was only warned as an update, so maybe if we're going to take some action, we should warn it on an upcoming, like, do you anyone think we're not ready for that?
I think we can warn it in an upcoming meeting, talk about the bond. Brandon and Randy.
I'm all for kind of consolidating bond votes into elections that are happening anyway, just to save on the coordination and costs and all this. But I guess my question is, if we wait until November, which is 7 months away, do we actually have 7 months of legwork to do, or do we have 6 weeks of legwork to do, and then folks are waiting for 5.5 months on the vote. I would prefer that not be the case.
We put the bond issue out sooner.
Right, just have, I mean,
Depending on the amount that we're-
right.
We could certainly talk with bond counsel and ask about a reasonable timetable to have the necessary hearings, et cetera, et cetera.
Word it correctly.
Are you suggesting?
Jim, then Laney.
I actually asked after Brandon.
Okay, well, Laney and then Jim, go ahead, Laney.
Yeah, for John, I all the time, you hear me ask Gail, what our current bond status is. When we look at going for another bond, it's always nice to have ahead of us a
Yes,
schedule to know what's dropping off.
Yeah.
And to know what's dropping off in the next 10, 15 years. If that's something you could do
for sure.
and present to the board, that way we know to present to the voters that, yeah, we're asking for a bond, we're gonna drop this off. I think that's very, very vital information
Yeah.
to be able to present when we're asking for more money.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, further questions?
Are you suggesting a special election, or are you talking about the August primary? I'm not sure what you were asking.
Right, now, depending on the cost of holding a special election,
Ooh,
I might.
No.
Please, Laney.
I think we're much happy to-
Okay.
happy to
I think
discuss
the,
further.
I think the ultimate thing is we're gonna talk about putting this up for a vote, for a bond vote at some point. John's gonna provide us the information like we would do and everything. Brian?
Right, and I think you need to also be cognizant of the timing of a bond vote because we've already adopted the 25 budget.
Mhm.
So would you have an interest payment due next year that's not in the budget this year? So you just have to be looking at that
We
too.
learned in the fire department situation that usually or often the first year of the interest payment is not made in that first year. That it can be kicked in the following year. But we can confirm all that by research. Thank you.
Further questions? Please come up.
Hello, Todd Campbell, White River Junction. I was wondering what the scenario is if the bond goes up and the bond fails. What is the status of the road at that point? You mentioned concrete splitting horizontally above the center. Is there a safety issue other than simply we've closed the road permanently now? Or is there something that has to be done if there's no funding for the project?
If there's no funding, there's nothing you can do. You have to, as a board, everyone has to come back together and plan another avenue. And the road remains closed.
But I'm sorry, I think what he's asking though is what's a safety concern? That's what I think I heard him say. What's the safety?
There is a safety concern. The most pressing wall is closed.
Okay.
The road is closed. The second most pressing, we will have to obviously take more looks at it and keep an eye on it, but another avenue forward will have to be planned.
But there's no danger, imminent danger of
Currently,
collapsing on Bugby?
Currently, there is none.
Okay.
That we positively know of. It changes all the time.
Does that answer your question, Todd? Okay.
Any other questions or comments on this agenda? Okay, thanks, guys. This is about time we normally take our break, so we'll do that.
Thank you, Mr. Lathrop, and kudos to you for slugging through your cold at home.
Thank you.
All right, let's look to come back around quarter up and we'll hit up the next items. Well, we got everybody back, so we'll take up the next item, which is that we're gonna review the walking bridge repair bids. So I'll turn that over to Brian.
Chris. All righty. All right, so this is a little bit pre the next presentation, so it kind of leads up to that. So this bridge, the Wilder Bike Path Bridge, has been ailing for a little bit of time. We previously were trying to stash some money away to deal with it, get the engineer and study on it done. It's and part of that was going to happen in the bridge assessment and plan that was coming up. However, this product, apparently the weathered steel that it utilizes, it is breaking down rather fast. And now we have research since this happened. Ludlow's had this problem. Montpelier's had this problem. So moving on from that, VTrans recommended we close the bridge down this year, right about when we were writing the RFP to get it taken care of. So life safety, we've closed it down. We immediately broke off of the bridge assessment capital improvement plan RFP, wrote one up for engineers. Engineers are in demand, short supply of them. We reached out directly to many. Did the public outreach, everything. Got one response. And it was what we felt was rather excessive compared to the likely cost to take care of it. Moving from there, we contacted VTrans and some other folks and looked for their recommendations. And they're like, well, just get it fixed. Like, go to our pre-qualified list, call them up. Bridge season's almost upon us. You're not going to get much luck on bids, or you'll get ones you don't want. You need to solicit the people you want to actually do the work who are qualified, respected, on our pre-qualified list, have engineered services as well. It can be a design build endeavor. So one of the first ones we reached out to was Daniel's Construction. We have a good history of working with them to get a sense. They did, and why we reach out to them is they did Ludlow's repair. We did a background check with Ludlow about how it went, details on it. It was a super job. We got photos, we got evidence. They did a great job. Everyone's happy. We were trying to speed up the process of this. So we then reached out to Miller Construction in Windsor, who the estimator for that project lives at Stony Creek, right next door, well-versed with the bridge, has the same capabilities as Daniels. So we got a bid from those two, had trouble finding a third one, reached out to a firm in New Hampshire, the nearest one we could. Hasn't worked with VTrans before, got price in, seemed low. We did some checking back and forth with them. Their terms of purchasing and deposits and so forth didn't match up with our purchasing policy. Reached out for clarification from them and to make sure everything we had emailed them was going to be in it. We reach out on the phone, by email, we never got follow-up with them. So we considered that one incomplete and a little suspiciously low. As you see in the documents, Daniels was the low bidder and only by a little over 4,000, 5,000 for Miller Construction. So they were provided the plans for the bridge. They were provided what we wished, which was to replace everything structural holding up the decking and the railings to be galvanized hot dip steel and certain treatments with certain paints to match the weathered steel in visible areas. So both very competitive and right on par with each other for pricing. What we didn't do is put it on the web, spend a month going back and forth. Because originally Daniel said, you know, if you can do it real soon, we have an opening, we'll give you a $10,000 discount. But because we needed to secure the other bids and we gave them a reshot, said, you know, submit a new bid, without that as a consideration, too much time goes by because we can't react that fast and find the money. We don't get the $10,000 discount, but we get a competitive price from someone we trust. And that would be done this shortly. So, I mean,
the goal is to get this thing up and back online for summer.
So as far as
it's a high priority.
life expectancy of leaving some weathered steel, where the weathered steel is going to be left, the aesthetic parts, the handrails, it's held up excellent. It's doing well, gives the look everybody wants. There's no need to replace that part. But the decking obviously is weathered, all that goes.
Questions for Chris or Frank?
Yeah, I mean, the process you went through with the bids all sounds really thorough, so it's not a question about that. It's just the location. Is this like the bridge that's sort of right near the highway underpass?
It's underneath,
Yeah, underneath the highway underpass. And you said it's closed currently?
Closed currently, yep.
Is there like a detour for people like trying to get to the Dothanbrook School on that path?
So
or?
unfortunately, right now, the only path available is the shoulder of the road. So the sooner we get it taken care of, the better.
I mean, Rec actually had a run out there earlier that we had to detour around and do a bunch of coordination just so they could have their 5K run out there. And I've recently been approached too within Storybook for stuff for the summer in regards to putting storybooks out there for walking like that. So it is a very visible, high used, corridor. So.
Other questions?
Well, I appreciate that, you don't need our approval for the funding sources. I still appreciated having that breakdown of really how this was being funded.
Yeah, you can thank Gail. She helped us out, did a great job.
Take a motion. Eric?
I move that the select board waive section 5.0 of the purchasing policy as the project was competitively bid by a select group of available and qualified firms, and approve the town manager to execute a contract with Daniels Construction for $182,500, and to approve any reasonable change orders up to a maximum additional amount of $18,000 or a maximum total contract value of $200,500.
Second.
I'll second.
A second from Kim. Discussion. Lanny?
Just a question, when is the Daniels could get to this?
Well, now that we have approval, we will hopefully be able to get a date from them to show up without knowing they're going to get the job. They have not committed to a date. So we will, as soon as we have a commitment from them, we will let everybody know a schedule.
Other questions, discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We're moving on to the bridge assessment and highway capital plan discussion.
So moving on to this one. As you know, some of you weren't around, but this has been a topic through the capital improvement plan meetings we had, and it was designated and it was followed up with in the ARPA meetings as a funding source to fund this project. In 2011, we had our original plan done, approved. It included some bridges that aren't on here that we actually don't own, but previously we included them because we were interested in pushing the state into replacing them. Those would be like the ones over the railroad in Wilder. When the original assessment was done, it was 2010. By the time it was released, Irene came through. All right, so the whole dynamics of the plan went out the window. All the small ones that were okay just got forgotten about. Our priorities became whether it was the West Hartford Bridge, just so many. The covered bridge in Quechee. I mean, those are where the priorities went automatically to. Those got taken care of. The railroad bridges did get replaced in Wilder. So there's many of them that no longer needs into this plan. At the same time, the VA cutoff bridge is being replaced. So that changes the whole dynamic of that plan. We never really fully enacted the plan because of Irene. So now's a chance to have a fresh start, to go back, especially to all the bridges, the smaller ones that are in here, and get the assessment redone, get bridge and structural engineers taking a good look at them. Identify issues that were not properly taken care of or that we don't know. We're very limited on staff, and help us redo what money we need to anticipate spending on these going forward. It also will help us with going after structures grants to engineer or replace these. It'll give us what we need to help with that. We did just recently apply for a structures grant for the podunk, if you're not aware, and another paving grant. But this will definitely help our case. You know, when you go and get in line, they look for background information of why you need this. This is going to help us go after grant, not just for engineering, but for construction. It's going to help move things along and get back on track with the bridges, especially the small bridges. And there is one other thing we asked for in here was that because we are limited on staff, the capital improvement plan is going to be for private contractors to do a lot of the work, not, beyond washing the bridges and stuff like that, stuff we don't have the personnel or capabilities for. So that's all going to help us set up a budget, future budgets that are appropriate so that it does get taken care of. That being said, Stan Tech was by far the low bidder, and if you ask, why is that artificially low? Well, they created our first one. They have the spreadsheets, they have the knowledge. They don't have to recreate it all. So we're not paying for a recreation. We're paying for people who have experience with these bridges, knowledge of these bridges, to come in and basically do an update. Worth the effort to do the RFP to make sure you're on track, doing the right thing. But they stood out in it. They actually prepared us the best proposal and gave us the best price.
Okay. Questions on this one? Okay, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the town manager to sign a contract with Stantec Consulting Services Incorporated for $35,700 and to approve any reasonable change orders based upon inspection discoveries up to a maximum contract value of $50,000.
Second?
I'll second the motion.
Second from Mary. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So our next item is the FY24 paving contract change order.
You want a break or you want to keep going?
I can keep going.
Keep going.
All right, so many of you here remember last year's, we awarded paving to Blacktop. At the time we awarded the paving, it set up a budget, which was rough in concept, except for some fixed base roads. We were not aware if we were going to receive a $200,000 Class 2 paving grant from VTrans. So we were given permission to proceed with more roads and more work. If we did in fact get grant revenue, which we would then reinvest in more paving. We did pave the road that we received the grant, so there's no conflict there. It's just reinvesting the revenue right back into our highways. That being said, the initial contract was for $685 roughly. There's a lot of new personnel at DPW. Things operate a little bit differently now. So while we were under budget on the PO, the purchase order, the contract value was exceeded and it was caught after the fact for paving. And that's typically, you have overages and unders in construction, and the base contract at $685 was exceeded. Nobody put two and two together. It's the best way to say it. And a change order is required just to make that whole and right. So that's the first change order in front of you.
The 15,576.
Yeah. Okay. So the next change order is, now that we want to utilize the additional revenue to attack the Quechee Heartland Road, will be number one. That was the original intent. Now that we've had time to go out there, survey, evaluate Quechee Heartland Road, we picked a stop point And we also want to attack East Gilson Road. Why? Well, we reconstructed West Gilson Road, right? And that's nice. And East Gilson is a neglected, it's got drainage issues. It doesn't make sense to leave one bad road and a whole bunch of shiny roads around it. So it's the best use of the money at that point. So that's in there. We did not finish Fowler Lane due to storm damage and the task we have to perform on Fowler Lane last year. And then we also want, as you recall in our discussions, Quechee Main Street past the Mill Run condos, where we got FHWA money to stabilize the slope and under drain it and fix some drainage to help stabilize that road. We were unable, because that was when they gave us permission at the end of the season, we were unable to get a paver in to do the paving portion, which would then allow us to get reimbursed by FHWA for it. So we tried and tried, however, that didn't happen. So now we're gonna lump in finishing that repair through there and a little bit longer than the repair in areas where it's needed as well, to use up the 261 that we have left for FY24.
Questions?
These are not FY25 paving projects. That's bids to go out.
Then,
So I see the stopping point on Quechee Heartland Road, just below French's Hill, halfway on the hill. What's the plan for future as far as for the rest of the road goes?
The rest of the road?
Yeah.
So it won't be FY25 right now. We have worse roads that are gonna get attended to than that one. And can I give you the date we're gonna do it? Depends on funding levels.
Are we gonna fix the areas of the road beyond French's Hill where it's sagging and deteriorated at
So,
least?
within our FY25 budget, currently right now, it's only in draft form for roads. We have a pot of money that is for going out to shim
Some greater
and
shimming.
overlay certain bad roads. One, for instance, would be more of Quechee Main Street in some places. One would be Old River Road, has some bad spots. And one would be Quechee Heartland Road. I don't consider that a paving project. That's a patch, but it is in the budget.
Okay, I got a 4-inch hole right by my house, so.
The good news is for fiscal year 25, we have a pretty healthy amount of money for paving projects.
We have a healthy amount of money, but it still only tackles
Of course.
a minor part of
course,
some really bad roads.
any other questions? We'll take a motion. Elaine?
Make the motion that we authorize the town manager to execute change order number 1, the amount of $15,567.72 to Blacktop Inc. to cover the overage paid to date, sorry, and change order number 2, the amount of $226,056 to Blacktop for the revised scope of work for new contract amount of $923,752.30, with a remaining balance of $38,689.71 be utilized following the purchasing policy for the supporting vendors and contracted services required to implement the plan.
Make a friendly amendment,
Friendly
right?
amendment.
Where?
You said the number wrong.
Yeah,
223.
223, said 226. $223,056 from the change order. number
220, I'll accept the friendly amendment.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Give a second. Kim, any discussion on this one? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So next is the highway grant aid letter of intent.
This is a standard annual agreement. VTrans goes out. They solicit throughout all municipalities in the state what's called their letter of intent for the Road and Aid grant project. This is in regards to what they call the hydraulically connected segments of roadways. Two Rivers probably did a study for the town a few years ago. And under our road management plan, we're required to fix certain areas of it. So this is what this program was identified for. So what this is asking for now is just we're going to put the letter in. And then from there, we have a current amount right now. The state's allocating 28,500 in grant funds and then about 7,125 for local. That could change because as municipalities don't apply, that number typically goes up. So we won't know that though till probably sometime in June after the cutoff for that. So all this does right now is just saying we're telling VTrans we're interested in applying for the grant program.
Which is an 80-20 split.
Questions on this one? Or motion?
Chair, I move the select board authorize the submission of the fiscal year 25 VTrans grant and aid program letter of intent and authorize the town manager to sign the letter of intent.
Second?
A second.
A second from Brandon. Any discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I think the last thing from you guys tonight, you've done great work, is an update on curbside recycling.
So we've been in a multi-year contract and actually been in one-year extensions with Casella for the curbside recycling program. They informed us last year that due to a fleet modernization that they're doing with their vehicles, they would not be interested in doing any type of extension longer. At first it was not, we're done. As of June 30th, we're going to be done. In conversations with Dave Allen, who's their division director, they agreed, and they have other municipalities that said, whoa, time out, you just can't drop this program or what you're doing here for us. So I've negotiated with them a 6-month extension past our current date. The reason why the fleet modernization, I don't know if any of you has Casella, but if you go and you see them pick up your rubbish, they have a truck where arm comes up, dumps it into the front, and then that dumps it in the back. That's what they're going to for their recycling trucks. So right now, you're not gonna have an individual who gets out of the truck, pulls your container around, and dumps it in the back. That's just corporate wide. They're going to that. You trying to get cost out of Casella is difficult. Obviously they wouldn't want to give us what a new contract for like a 1-year price would be, because it would be telling us what it would be. If we went out to bid, we would know already. The word would get out there for that. So there's a lot of variables here that we have to deal with. But I think right now we just start the discussion on whether the continuance of curbside, whether it's something the community wants to have. And this just right now buys us that extra 6 months to have that conversation and figure out where we go forward from there with that.
Through the end of the calendar year.
Through the end of the calendar year, Mike.
And the context,
So,
of course, is the ongoing transfer station.
correct.
facilities.
We have a lot of moving parts in this
And
piece. So
ongoing conversations between myself, the town manager, or the city manager in Lebanon, and the town manager in Hanover, all get together and talk about regional garbage and recycling issues. So there's lots of balls in the air. We don't know what the final result will be, but this certainly is a necessary Band-Aid to buy us the time, as Brian said, for a few more months.
Okay, so this is just to continue it for those 6 months. Wow. To be determined, it sounds like.
yeah, initially it was going to be 90 days, and they were gonna, when we first started doing, they said they would just give us 90 days. And I just said, Dave, we need more than that. Asked for the year, and they said no. The best they could give us would be 6 months. So.
Okay.
And this, I realized that this is, anyway, this is, we've had this conversation before, and I guess that, like, do you guys have a sense of what the alternatives are? Like, what is that conversation that we're gonna have? Is it?
So I'll just put my input in.
We have different philosophies in this panel.
So the first part is I've heard or read some emails and stuff, and people wondering, tie in the feasibility of the transfer station to this. So I just want to show we're all aware that transfer station can't fund this. This is a taxpayer issue. The alternatives is you can be like most Vermont communities. You can say, okay, you're on your own. When the trash man comes, he by law has to offer curbside pickup and bundle it in together for the price of the trash, which is a slightly higher price to handle That's what most communities around here do. And then whether it's the town of Hartford operating the transfer station or a private entity, or if it's fast trash on a weekend or 2 days a week or whatever it is, those days that that's open, it has to accept your recyclables. So what it eliminates, if you do not have the curbside as a municipal service, it eliminates an inequity, because if I'm a commercial person paying the taxes, I don't get the service. If I live on a private road and I can't bring my trash down to the public road, you don't pick up my recyclables. If I'm in a condo complex, I don't believe.
We have some dumpsters.
Yeah, some, but so the way it's set up, it's not a service that everybody's entitled to. So there is some subsidization going in, right, at the taxpayer level. And then there's a subsidy to Casella for them, because it's a monopoly at that point in the town, because or you can look at it as a subsidy to the small hauler who doesn't want to deal with it. Now you allowed him to escape dealing with it. So it's a complicated.
When curbside recycling was adopted as policy by the select board, that was before state laws changed,
Right.
which made
Right.
it mandatory for private haulers to bundle that in with the recycling. So yes, arguably somebody's getting a subsidy or a windfall
Yeah,
from that change.
and some of that could be your point of view, right?
Yeah.
Or your personal circumstance versus someone else's. So it's a big discussion.
Which we're not having tonight.
Which we're not having tonight. So your options are either we taxpayers fund it, or everyone just has to go to a transfer station or pay their trash hauler to pick it up.
I wonder if it would make sense if particularly because now we're in this like 6-month crunch a little bit, but like, what if we were to plan our first listening session with the community, and it could be, the topic could be solid waste and recycling? Have y'all, like, particularly if we are gonna get I mean, I realize that they're not, I realize the transfer station cannot fund recycling, that is not even remotely close, but the waste streams are related. I mean, there are.
Right, let me just, I asked back in December, I asked Dave Allen to try to give us a little bit of a count of what clicked. So he gave us a 2-week window right before Christmas. So typically you have about 1,000 pickups every week. You know, we're on a bi-weekly cycle, so every other week you get your recyclables picked up. So you have maybe, 40, if not even 50% of the residents actually using the recycling, the curbside. So that's more data that to get into. I have Casella. I pay right now $56 a month for rubbish and recycling. Just not holding us to anything, but you would probably take a look at an increase of anywhere between $12 to $15 if I, as a private resident, wanted to do it by myself. Say the program went away, that's about a rough estimate of what I would see in an increase, because they can't charge for recycling. They just add it to your solid waste disposal for that. So.
Anyway, I would pitch that as particularly if it could come close, like if we're gonna get the presentation.
Looks like August is the first listening session.
Yeah.
Here.
Subject to flexibility, but like if we get a presentation on the feasibility study, that would be our kind of public
We'll push that.
there, then we have like, also like this information is available, we need to do something, and then just get some input, like whatever, you give us the presentation in public session, but then we have an opportunity to hear from residents in that.
If the town manager's administrative assistant is any example, there's going to be a lot of people who love this service that the town has voted to provide, and it's always hard for the government to explain to people the withdrawal of such a service. That's just a fact.
Mary and then Lynn.
Just, and maybe I'm in the weeds in this, and I apologize, but I've always wondered, where I live, we have curbside recycling, but we also have the Casella dumpster for recycling. So it's like we get twice benefits. And
you mean the trash?
Yeah.
So Casella trash and Casella road. So you're Condo is-
We have both recycling and trash, but we have curbside every Tuesday. So if you don't put it out, you can just go
Right to the
walk
bin.
up to
Right.
where the recycling is, and I always felt, this is kind of a waste. And then I read somewhere that 46% of housing in Vermont is condos, and I'm going, well, if, or homeowners associations, if that's true, and if they have something similar to that in others, then we're kind of duplicating processes. I don't know, it's just something that I thought about, that I kept wondering, well, why, I know we're guaranteed this, but we really need it. We don't, but other people do, I'm not saying that, so.
So me as a consumer that does not have curbside pickup on my garbage would ask the question, if I don't accumulate a lot of garbage, but yet I do recycle because I'm very conscious about that, am I still gonna pay $56 a month? Is
If you
the
contract
bill?
with Casella or a private hauler, yeah.
So it's
Whatever the
not
rate
based on the amount of garbage you produce, it's based on a flat fee.
Right.
So you could pile up 18 bags of garbage and still be charged $56 a week.
It's not
No,
like a
no.
transfer station.
You can still go to the transfer station. And the other thing is you gotta remember is Casella's moving to the tote system.
Right.
And that's a capital.
Well, that's my next
investment that
question
The
is,
town's gonna have to also make.
well,
That's a large.
that's my next question,
Well,
is
we don't
that
have
gonna
to.
be
Okay.
passed along to the consumer? Or the town gonna pay for it? Is Casella gonna rent you a
That's-
trash receptacle?
I had that conversation today and there are the variables that need to be worked out, Lenny.
Yeah.
Okay. Casella has its own business model and there's some room for negotiation, but if we were to put out an RFP and we identify that, then these are the type of things with their new modernization that we'd have to work out with them if, say, they were the low proposer
Is
that we
there
would decide to go with.
is there a hauler in the Upper Valley that is capable of taking on the town of Hartford's recycling alone?
I've only had one other conversation with a hauler and my conversation with that individual, I don't think they really expressed too much interest in getting into that, so.
So we're backed into a corner by Casella.
Well, you just do a transfer. People go to the transfer station. And that's one of the things I wanted to point out too, though, is that even though we have this number, $275,000, if we do away with curbside, we still have the processing fee.
Yeah,
So
you're
we're
forcing our
still,
hand to
there's
having to
just,
keep
we're
the
gonna be,
transfer
we're gonna
station.
have more containers leaving a transfer station. So it's not like it's gonna wipe out all of that cost. We're still gonna have a cost for processing.
But we got all that money.
It's an interesting
So-
conversation.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's ridiculous.
I think the question is, how do we feel about extending this? for 6 months? That's our vote. There's plenty of time for the other questions that come up, Raymond.
Well, my question was about timing. So I heard earlier that our contract was going to expire in June. And so this would extend it for 6 months into December. If we have a listening session in August, does that leave us enough time to get another solution depending on what the
Well, I'm
voters-
hearing from DPW that we might not have Sanborn heads feasibility study until the summer. I
Yeah,
don't
we
know how
need to,
specific that's for.
we have a meeting with them. We're gonna tomorrow in regards to getting this going.
So I'm totally confused now, because I'm hearing you say there isn't an alternative, or is there one?
There is.
What is the
So the
Casella to
customer.
take your trash and
No,
recycle.
no,
So that's
sorry,
one, that's
sorry.
an alternative.
No,
If-
I understand that, but is there another entity that could take this over?
Not between now and June 30th.
Right,
No.
yeah, okay, that I just wanted to be clear on, because it was getting a little murky.
Yeah.
That's really it. Okay, thanks.
Questions? Nick?
Yeah, to me, I know it's a thorny issue you don't want to get into, but to me, on this thing as a consumer, I would want to look at what's the cost of Casella coming to pick up trash versus the cost of implementing our transfer station to be able to do that. That's what it's going to come down to, is which is going to be cheaper. Because your idea of going to a transfer station is all fine and good, but that's going to mean we're going to have to put money into that to bring it back to specs of what we need. And that's going to cost us
Well,
tremendous amount of money.
we have to provide through our SWIP plan a drop-off location, whether it's us or a private company. So if you look at justifying what we have to, if we have to lease it or if we have to run it ourselves, what we have to charge. The one thing we don't do currently at that transfer station is charge for recyclables. We are the one entity in the waste stream that is allowed, if you come in with recyclables only, we are allowed to charge you a fee for recyclables.
For access to the facility.
No, for
Well,
the
you can charge
recyclables itself.
for recyclables.
So transfer stations are allowed. If you
If
come
it's a
in
newer change.
with just recyclables, we're allowed to charge for it. So we can recoup through fees the cost of people dropping off the recyclables. If we adopt that model, then we would obviously probably adopt just like haulers do, a bundled fee for those who brought both. And then those who only brought garbage would get a just garbage fee.
I'm having a hard time understanding why someone would pay to take recyclables to Hartford when you can go over to Lebanon and not even have a permit and drop off your recycling. That's the problem I'm having conflict with it. So.
What's this article? Feasibility study.
Okay.
That's what we're doing.
Okay, we've got a question before us about 6-month extension.
Yes.
Any more discussion on that?
I was ready to make motion. I just have one quick question. Can I drop the word consider in the motion?
Sure.
Okay. I move that the select board enter into a 6-month extension with Casella Waste Services Incorporated to allow time for further discussion regarding the continuance of the program and to authorize the town manager to sign a 6-month agreement with Casella Waste Services Incorporated dated March 22nd, 2024.
We have a second?
Second.
A second from Ida. Any discussion before we vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Keep your powder dry for further discussions.
Want me to steal those? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, our next item, we've got a couple things. The last two are essentially, we'll go quickly through previews, pick up in the future. So our next item is to consider whether we're going to consider whether to adopt the policy on policy. This has come before us many times. It's been up for a couple of years. The basic idea is that there is a sample template for policies that you can see in here, which gives us information about the purpose, scope, definitions, everything like that. So I guess the real question is, do we want to adopt this format for policies that are going forward? I know there's a large number of policies that are still being identified that are not in this format. But I think the idea here is that we would adopt a uniform template for when we create new policies. And Kim, I know you've got some background with this proposal. So if you have anything you'd like to add.
Sure, and I don't know if John, basically I didn't prepare a memo for this, and then so John basically has just included a bunch of email threads, but the basic background is in 2021, the select board at that time did basically agree to the recommendations of the Racial Equity Committee to establish a policy on policies and a template for what policies going forward look like. So in the packet are some sample template of a policy and then a policy on policies, which I support adopting. And this doesn't have to necessarily mean that retroactively we have to change all our policy formats, but basically setting sort of a format for going forward that when any policy is created or revised, that it could then be put into the template format and also follow the policy on policies is basically just a way for us to
Standardize,
thank you, the process of what we do with policies.
Sue?
I really like this. because I think it really encourages people to get involved in the process. Because otherwise, it's kind of an overwhelming thing to take on, even if you have a good idea. So I was very happy to see this in the packet. Thank you for your work.
Les, the former chair of H4A, who's still a member now, Sarah Campbell, and yeah, and Allie did a lot of work on it too. Mine was kind of superficial, but I've supported it all along.
And staff has seen it and discussed it, and they're largely supportive of it, so no problem from there.
Questions or comments? Two.
When have we ever heard so much agreement on a question?
You know,
this is great. I think we should just save this.
I imagine the motion would be to adopt the policy of policies template.
Yes.
Essentially.
And then also the policy on policies. So there's two, there's a policy template and the policy on policies. I'm happy to make that motion if it's appropriate. Mr. Chair, I move that the select board adopt the proposed template for town of Hartford policies, and that the select board also adopt the proposed policy on policies as presented.
Motion, we have a second.
Sorry.
We have a second from Sue. Any discussion? Randy?
What would be the implementation date of this, John?
Well, again, we were talking about a policy that's going to be active going forward. So I believe it's will be effective immediately. And that next time that there's a policy written or proposed, it would be placed into this format. And when there's policy being considered, a draft within this template format would be presented to the select board and they would put it up or down.
So does this mean that we're gonna have to go through all our current policies and
I don't hear
have
that
them in
from the
this?
motion. I don't hear that that's
Right, that's the
intent.
thing so we're not
It's going
talking
forward,
about,
It's prospective.
so the staff time is gonna be minimal.
That's right.
Going forward. That's the big thing that I'm concerned
I
about,
appreciate that.
is dumping a lot of staff time involving current policies. So
John,
I can support that then.
the sample light banner, light pole policy, that's in the new
It
format
is.
as well.
It is,
right?
I think.
So when we see new policies or if an old policy is updated or revised, we might.
Yeah.
But there's no one has to go back and update it.
No, and there, sorry.
No.
We did fund a little bit for policy digitization in the fiscal 25 budget. I think it's just like $5,000 or something like that. But there is the potential for that being some future project that, like, whether it's a committee or volunteers or something that like agrees to reformat documents so that there's more consistency. But that's definitely not, this is just this first step of establishing a baseline and going forward. And then tackling anything bigger like that would be.
Then we have an intern.
Exactly.
Okay, any more discussion on this? We have a motion and a second. So I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The next item, this is actually pretty quick. So we have select board rules of procedure. Everybody's got a hard copy on their desk. And in our packet, we have the draft that was prepared by Dominic Cloud after we had that meeting about agendas and efficient meetings, things like that. So he gave us a draft of select board rules of procedure. This is something we won't vote on tonight, but we will at a future meeting. So I guess it's sort of like assigning homework if people are interested to compare the current with the proposed and see if there are things in our current rules of procedure we'd like to keep in the new rules, and certainly any comments on the new rules themselves or concerns. I think we can funnel those to John and he can pick this up and debate it at a future time. But as I think Dom mentioned, our current rules, they kind of try to do a couple things, right? Like they set the rules of procedures, but they also have some other stuff with like sort of conduct expectations, things like that. And so I would just ask that you take a look at the two rules, and if you have any comments, suggestions, or concerns about the new rules in particular, to let John know, and then at a
By
future
next Wednesday or so we can get them into your packet.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so in a future meeting, we'll take this up. It could be the 30th, but let's I think that's just what I would ask, is that everyone take a look at it and see what they think.
No, can we ask a quick question?
Yeah,
now?
absolutely.
I know that we talked about the public comment time limit,
Mhm.
which is currently 5 minutes, and I see it's suggested to remain 5 minutes. Was there?
These are the
These are the old
hard
ones?
copies, is the ones that are in place. The
Gotcha.
new ones are in the packet.
Okay, okay.
And that reduces the public comment time. It's suggested at 2 minutes, and that we've also heard 3, but those are sort of the details I hope we can discuss and work out at a future meeting. Okay, and then we have the draft Lightpole banner policy. Again, we can ask John to give us a little bit of an overview of what it does, but I think the idea is that we would take this up on the 30th and think about adopting it. And then at that same time, probably hear our first request from a group to put up banners at that same meeting. But, you know, this is one of those, I think it's nice, John would say, to have a policy in place like we do with the flag. And this one, I'll let John take it over, but basically it would allow people to fly banners for 30 days at a time, a total of 60 days in 1 year. It has requirements about size and this. So this just came out in our packet. We're already starting to get some public comment about it, which is very helpful. And I'm sure we'll hear more, and certainly select board, you know, take a look. If you have any comments, concerns, let John know. And I think we'll try and put this up for a vote on the 30th. But John, I don't know if you want to give some background.
Yeah, basically, Mel attended the Hometown Hero presentation and the subsequent discussion and emails and further discussion after that meeting. And it certainly brought to my mind that rather than deal with this kind of on an ad hoc basis, why not have some structure in mind? In fact, it was Kim who I think took the task of developing an initial draft, which I then looked at and discussed with both her and Mike Waite and tweaked a little bit based on these conversations, but it's certainly nothing set in stone. It's just a starting point.
Yep.
And that's what the political process is about. The select board hearing from the public and discussing among themselves what the policy ought to be. But I think we could probably agree that it's good to have a policy so that we treat all future requests in a similar way. And that's what I was looking to, was the town's history before my arrival of the discussion and debate over the flagpole policy. And if there was going to be a policy about that sort of communication or speech, maybe this is a related issue of speech that should be similarly regulated in terms of town infrastructure being used. That's all.
Just a quick question. When you get the comments and suggestions so that we move ahead, will it need to be in the policy format, or that comes later?
Well, we certainly have adopted the policy on policies.
Okay.
I think Kim drafted the first stab at a banner policy with that template in mind, right? And we get more comments from people across town, and I'm happy to try to incorporate that into a revised draft for the next meeting, or if the board, since you're the policy-making body, would like to do so or designate someone to do so, that's perfectly fine with me also. But I think just for discussion, it might be helpful to try to incorporate some of what I view as maybe the better or the most popular ideas into a working draft. But it's not the only way.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the way I could see it playing out is not that the town manager gets feedback from the public and incorporates it into the draft. It's that the board gets feedback from the public and decides if they want to make modifications to the draft. I mean, there's going to need to be some modifications whatsoever, but like, you know, if there's a comment from the public that says, you know, well, we think that the banners should only be up for 1 week, like, then we would consider that the board would decide to incorporate it.
Okay.
So I'm trying to, make this clear for myself. Okay, so even though I wasn't at the last meeting when you discussed this, I've had feedback from residents near where I live. So I wouldn't present that information that I got from John to John. I thought you were asking us to look over the policy and make suggestions.
And that was a thought along this thread. we were
Okay,
just
so I'm
discussing.
trying to figure
I'd be
out
more than
whether
happy,
we can all
I'd be
share.
more than happy to stand away from the political nature
Yeah,
of this and have the political body handle this going forward. However, the board wishes to work its will.
And I think there's like two questions sort of, right? Because there's like, is this banner policy look acceptable? And is this request for a certain type of banner flown approved by the board?
Right.
Right, and so, you know, I think those are two separate things. As for the banner policy itself, I mean, someone wrote up and they said, hey, the size of it shouldn't be 24 by 47, it should be 24 by 48, right? And that's a suggestion. I think stuff like that we'll look at and decide whether we want to do it.
But I just wanted to know, should I give John or give the board, who do I send information to from people who have talked to me?
We can send information to John if you want, on
Okay.
behalf of, what you've heard, whatever.
Yeah,
And John can collate it and keep it, provide it to the board as a whole, but it shouldn't be used for him to make modifications.
Right.
So you don't wish for me to modify the policy, we'll deal with the current draft. And then we'll have a long list of comments that I will collect and present to you in your packet to consider.
Okay, great. That's
Yeah.
So it means you might not adopt something on the 30th, that might just be a working session toward it, find out.
I mean, I think we can also encourage neighbors and constituents to write to the select board, which a lot of people have been doing. Now that the policy is public, obviously there's, another proposal that's gonna come up again, so people can write to the board if they really wanna voice their opinions directly.
But I mean, it's a start, something I think to look at, we need that in order to, I think, to make any sort of forward momentum. But
The goal, in my opinion, was to just put it on the agenda tonight, same with the rules of procedure, to give the board and the public an opportunity to just be able to look at it and have some thoughts before putting it on a meeting that we thought we might adopt. So,
yeah, that's fine.
all right, great. I think that brings us, I think stay tuned on that one and get your comments in. I'm sure we'll get public comment about it. Commission reports. Lanny, do you have anything? Do you have anything?
Well, I went to my first meeting and it was completely closed session. So that's my report.
Okay, great. Ida, anything?
I still haven't fully gotten the habit of preparing something but I need to review the rules and procedures and what we have proposed about that. But the Energy Commission did have a really great event that I went to that was about how to electrify your home. And there's another topic in the morning that I didn't make it to, but well attended, great information, good engagement. So that was just a nice kind of public facing event that the Energy Commission was involved with.
Good. Mary Ann?
Actually, my first Corey meeting was canceled due to snow, so I haven't been.
Okay, Brandon, anything?
I attended a housing and homelessness committee meeting, and mostly we talked about the potential for the committee to advocate for a rental registry, and if so, what the committee would want that to look like and why we might want it in place. Right now, we're in the very early research stages. Each of us has a task that we're going to research about the thing and about town's ability to even do the thing.
You'll check Stowe and Londonderry and just Google headlines, because a lot of towns are adopting it. Woodstock, maybe.
Point of order there, Mr. Chairman. I think you got to understand that liaisons are really not supposed to be, unless you're a voting member, liaisons are supposed to be. Yeah, but liaisons are not supposed to be participating in the work of the committee. Liaisons are supposed to be the interface between the town and the committee.
Wait, what's the objection? I didn't hear you.
That we're supposed to be the conduit between the committee and the town, not supposed to take on the work of the committee.
Aren't you a committee member?
I'm a committee member.
Did you?
Corey and housing both have voting members.
Yeah.
I'm also a voting member.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Anything else? For Commissioner?
Yeah.
That's
okay. Kim?
Proper.
I got a flat tire in Northampton, so I did not make it to the planning commission last night. And I'll do my report for that for the 30th, and I'll write it up in advance.
All right.
Just by the minutes.
Sounds good. Okay, I don't have any commission reports, so we can do the consent agenda. It's double-sided.
Yes.
Agenda. You want to make that motion on the consent agenda? Yeah.
Not even need
Yeah, go ahead. So-
Every board I've ever been on, if we have a consent agenda, we only address it if someone's pulled something off of it. So I just want clarification. Why do we not do that?
We usually do, like if there's something in the consent agenda. in the past, we pull it back.
No.
Oh, you don't even
no,
vote on it?
No,
I don't
because
know,
if
we
it
just-
comes as consent agenda, you don't need to do it unless someone has a question. So I'm, if we have a different policy, that's fine. It's just, this was new to me.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we've just always done that. I mean, it may not be necessary, actually, but that's something I think to look into until we get an answer. Maybe we'll just make the motion.
And I'll abstain.
I will point out again that we're approving the minutes of April 2nd and March 27th.
Yep.
And came out a question about the financial controls checklist. Gail gets from the auditors every year a checklist that she needs to fill out as to whether certain financial controls are in place. It's kind of a laundry list of controls. And Gail has done so, and her next step is to present them to the select board that must not necessarily approve them or agree with them, but simply state that you've been given them. And so that's where the sign off here is on the table as well, and it's showing that the select board has received the checklist.
Okay. Motion for the consent agenda?
Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve the consent agenda. Oh, all the stuff, okay.
Renewal, yeah.
Okay, including the approve the payroll ending 4/13/2024, approve AP manifest of 4/12/2024 and 4/18/2024, approve meeting minutes of 4/2/2024 and 3/27/2024, and the select board meetings of 5/14/2024 and 5/28/2024, and the annual review of the internal financial controls checklist.
Yep. Have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Mary. Any discussion on that? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm gonna abstain.
And we have an
I'm
abstention
gonna
from
abstain,
Sue.
yeah.
Oh, it's the only vote of the night that's not unanimous.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Well, okay, well, this one should be unanimous. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
8:42.
I'll second.
A second from Mary. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Adjourns the meeting. Good. Sign.
Sign.